Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're here reacting and having a discussion about a video from Skrump, it says here. How Behaviour fumbled breakable walls. So, right off the bat I have no idea what we could be in for when we're talking about specifically breakable walls. And, I mean, like, I do have my own opinions about breakable walls. But I do want to see, what there is to discuss about breakable walls.
Breakable walls were first dropped back in 2020 with the Chains of Hate chapter, which gave us Death Slinger, Zarina, and of course, Dead Dog Saloon, which is a lot more fun to say when you're congested and can do a deeper voice. Anyway, if you've played on Dead Dog, you may have noticed that there are like a billion breakable walls in that map. There's a bunch in the main building, almost every maze tile on that map has one, there are structures towards the outer walls that have them, and even the shack has a breakable wall punched into it. I guess Behaviour was really excited about them being added, which makes the treatment of them all the more disappointing, especially considering just how much potential they really had. I remember people speculating that they would work like killer ambush spots or would work in unique ways with some killer powers, but when they were actually released, well, people were disappointed, to say the least.
I do have to say that breakable walls are probably one of the least important things to deal with, I think, when it comes down to playing as the killer, and utilizing them can be pretty hit or miss. They're nothing but obstacles in the grand scheme of things, and it's very unfortunate that we weren't able to really get any actual, like, interesting mechanics to go along with it. So that kind of sucks.
There were a lot of ideas floating around for how Behaviour would implement them, but when they were actually dropped, well, yeah. Players' first reactions to breakable walls kind of shaped how they'd be treated in the rest of their existence. Breakable walls mostly served as pre-drop pallets that the survivors couldn't interact with. They only work with the most pallet-related perks like Alert, Windows of Opportunity, or, on the killer side, Brutal Strength, Fire Up, or my goat, Thwack. Well, it's nice that these perks activate with them, that's about as far as they go for any synergy, other than some odd outliers here and there. Breakable walls, especially on Dead Dog, mostly just make loops stronger for survivors until they're broken by the killer. Once they're
And probably one of the most annoying aspects of the breakable walls is the mere fact that if you don't break them, a lot of the time the tiles are just disgustingly difficult. Dead Dog especially, very good example. You can use the shack as an example. If you break that wall, it'll make the shack a lot easier to deal with in comparison to the normal shack, which has the gigantic wall on the one side, and then the windows there, and then on the other side's the door, so it can be very annoying to deal with. So, getting rid of that wall does make it a lot weaker, which helps. And that even applies to other tiles in the map as well. You have to break down the wall in order for you to be able to, make a difference, especially when countering the tiles. Now, I do think I could try to drop videos about how to counter tiles as killer, and I probably can cover in depth, like more so, how to go about doing those things, especially on a map like this, which would be a very perfect example of what we're talking about. And the addition of breakable walls only makes tiles more difficult in some cases, and it also opens up this aspect where you have to keep in mind what to break and what not to break. And that applies to a couple different maps, like Springwood. Another map I can think of was on Macmillan. I think there's like a variation with the main building that you have to break down some walls and stuff like that. So I can try to cover that in the future. But for right now, we're going to focus on, breakable walls. So let's talk about it.
They're gone, the loops they were previously at basically become useless. This extends to breakable walls at main buildings, which are somehow worse. These walls are placed in those structures to create god windows, and when gone, make the building pretty unsafe to run. A couple that come to mind are the walls in Cold Tower, Groaning Storehouse, Suffocation Pit, sometimes, Gas Heaven, Azeroth's Resting Place, Wretched Shop, sometimes, Blood Lodge, you get the idea. Well,
I'm glad that he does cover a lot of the maps, and I have to say that a lot of the maps do kind of suck to go up against as an M1 killer specifically. So I'm going to try to go through each one just to kind of give you guys an example. So this main building right here that he's in right now, pretty difficult as an M1 killer. You're going to have to break the walls. You might have to break the wall next to the window, whether it's blocked or not, because of the fact that that window is so strong. Then if we talk, yeah, so right here you can see that the windows here, there's a wall there you have to break to counter this. Otherwise, that's a god window. Right, you can see from the angle there. It's kind of hard to show it because, you know, the clip is so fast, but I'll show it right here. I'll pause it. The window right there next to this crate, right there, god window if you don't break the wall. You literally have to go around it. Or if you fall through, they're going to rotate all the way around and then make it again. Very annoying. We already know that much. And then another example is in this area too. This is another god window in another Macmillan map. And even if you break the wall, it still doesn't make the tile any weaker. And the main building is still insanely strong for against an M1 killer. And then this one too, this breakable wall does make it slightly weaker, but it's still the main building. It's so strong. This main building is really strong too. They can chain into the pallet in the garage, so you can basically go from garage pallet, kind of like you can attempt to mind game it, but very hard to do. If there's some breakable walls in the back there that you could try to like leave closed and stuff like that. It's a lot to talk about, but basically you want to break this wall because this window's a god window. If you don't, it's still a very strong window. Breaking down this wall, once again, you kind of have to, because if you don't, once again, god window, you can't do anything about it. Meaning that you have to vault it and then they'll just make the full rotation anyway. So not really worth your time. And this one you don't break. The one he's showing here with the wood on the window right there, like some COD zombies like block the window type stuff, the barricade, you don't have to break this one. That one, like if you leave it like this, like, you know, breakable wall closed and the blocked window, it means that they can't use it. If it is open though, you have to break it, because once again, god window. So it's kind of insane that literally every single time it's a god window. It's kind of insane. But let's continue.
Sometimes Blood Lodge, you get the idea.
Oh yeah, Blood Lodge is another god. Yo, every single one of them is a god window. Golly. Playing an M1 is pain in this game.
Well, these aren't the biggest deal and are mostly just a slight annoyance that once gone, you never have to deal with again. It really makes me think, is this the best Behaviour could come up with? I mean, you have a new mechanic that could create a lot of interesting scenarios for different killers, and the best you could come up with is pre-drop pallets? Are you kidding me? Behaviour not expanding on this idea and leaving it as the most bare-bones, uninteresting, and dull design is such a missed opportunity, man. I'm sure a ton of people in this community could give some really cool ideas for how breakable walls could be expanded on in the future, but Behaviour just doesn't seem to want to try, which they very much demonstrated recently.
I sort of disagree, because breakable walls are already a nuisance to go pretty much to deal with in maps as a killer player. It only benefits, you know, the opposing side in that sense. So I'm not sure how much depth you can really add to that, at least in my opinion. If you guys who do know, you can leave a comment and you can tell us about how you would rework the breakable walls. But the going against breakable walls is such a pain in the ass a lot of the time, because you kind of have to break that wall. Like, you have to stop what you're doing and make sure you break it as soon as humanly possible, because if you don't, it makes it even more difficult than it already is as an M1 killer to get downs. So, you know, maybe it doesn't apply as much to killers that can throw stuff at you, or maybe killers that can dash towards you or stuff like that, but when you're playing Ghostface, Trapper, and stuff like that, it's almost kind of impossible, you know. Mainly Ghostface related, Skull Merchant as well, stuff like that, more so, because at least Trapper has the option to leave a trap by the window. At least you have that, at least. But and it's also why when I have spoken about this topic, I've always said that Ghostface and Skull Merchant are objectively the worst killers in the game. Trapper is still better than Ghostface by a long shot, by a mile. We already know that much. We've seen it happen with different creators who pick up Trapper, are still able to go on streaks, still able to make a lot happen with different plays along with Trapper. He still has a slight leg up in comparison to Ghostface that you literally never see anyone play without perks. You never see anybody go on streaks with. And it's and it's not for lack of trying, at least from my perspective. I gave it my best shot. I gave it my best chance. As to, attempting to go for a streak, but obviously can barely go past like 2, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Because it is horrible playing that killer in the current meta and everything like that. Very not fun.
But after the release of Breakable Walls, Behaviour began giving visual reworks to a lot of the older maps. Except Backwater Swamp for some reason, we're still waiting on that one. These for the most part kept a lot of the gameplay the exact same, except for the breakable walls that were added to the main buildings typically. Like I said, these breakable walls didn't expand on the gameplay very much, and just served as a minor annoyance that the killer just had to deal with. There were some interesting ones, like the walls that spawn in the House of Pain on Bad and Preschool, which can show up in a few locations, one of which actually makes the loop weaker for survivors if left unbroken. So the killer can use their game knowledge in a really interesting way, although most of the time the walls are pretty necessary to break, so any change to make them a bit more interesting is a W in my book, but that's just one of the only examples I can really think of, which makes me think this choice was just a stroke of luck by Behaviour. It really feels like, for most of these maps, Behaviour just kind of threw them in without much thought, although lately it seems like they're walking back on breakable walls completely. A little bit ago, there was a bug on Disturbed Ward where every single breakable wall that could spawn did. This made the main building, which was already very strong by the way, so much stronger. Once Behaviour got wind of this, they fixed the problem by... take a guess. A. Actually fixing the issue and having the default breakable wall spawn. B. Making Disturbed Ward a good map. Or C. Removing every single breakable wall on the map. Ding ding ding, I'm sure you got it, it's C. Surprise! Yeah, Behaviour fixed the issue by just taking all of them out of the map. I think this really goes to show where breakable walls are going to go in the next couple years. The newest maps don't really have any. There's like 2 on Ormond Lake Mine, none on Forgotten Ruins, and none on the newest map, Dead Sands.
I will say, in my opinion, that breakable walls are fundamentally a failure, I would say, of design in the game, and I can see why they're moving away from it. Because trying to implement any of those, trying to put those into place, I think adds a lot more than they really want to deal with, I think. We already have a lot of maps that are already very, very bad as it is. So, honestly, if it's one less thing for them to worry about by phasing out something so pointless as a breakable wall, then, honestly, more power to them. Behaviour really should be focusing on trying to create, maps that are actually like playable for killers, like including the M1 killers and not just the M2s, as they usually do. And so, with breakable walls even existing, it leads to God windows, which nobody wants to, like, no killer player wants to go up against that. And overall, it's just not very fun. In my perspective, in my opinion, I just don't like it. I don't prefer it. I just think it's just bad design. I think they should move away from it. It's not worth putting in that energy to do that. And, obviously, we'll see what happens in the future.
It's pretty clear that Behaviour never figured out what to do with them, so I assume we're slowly going to see them vanish over time. It really wouldn't surprise me if Behaviour released the next patch and announced that they were removing all the breakable walls from every single map in the game. They're probably going to get the same treatment that map variants got, where Behaviour admits they kinda screwed the pooch and fixed the issue by just cutting it out entirely, like a tumor. Which is really a shame, considering just how much potential they really had. If breakable walls...
Well, honestly, I don't know what potential they could have, because in my time playing the game, it's only been an obstacle. It's only been in the way. Just like pallets, they're just another thing you have to break and another thing you gotta get out of the way so you can actually get to what you need to do. And so with that perspective in mind, it's very hard for me to imagine what it could be used for. Because... trying to even, like, I don't even know what it could be used for, even trying to think of it now, because of how specific it is. Like, it's a wall in the way, you know what I'm saying? And then a lot of the time when it was in the way of something, it's usually because you are required to break it. So with that design in mind, it's like, just remove them entirely so that they're always open, so you don't have to constantly stop and break them all the time. It's a waste of time. Like, nobody's trying to do that every game. A lot of the maps already are very bad. A lot of the maps are already not well designed for the M1 killer experience. Like, a lot of M1 killers, especially ghostface and stuff like that, are going to have a rough time. So by eliminating at least one obstacle, at least we'll provide something for the lower tiers.
Walls were expanded on in interesting ways, I think they could have done a lot to make the game feel a bit more interesting. If Behavior placed them in locations that allowed for more interesting choices by the killer, giving them the option to break it or not depending on whatever killer they're playing, as we did see with the occasional spot or two, that would have been really fun. It could have greatly expanded on the playstyle diversity that DBD really thrives with. Imagine if there were certain perks that were created with breakable walls in mind. I mean, they wouldn't be very strong at the moment, but if breakable walls were changed to have more interesting gameplay surrounding them, it could have opened up a lot of new perk designs that Behavior could create. Sort of like hex perks. Or maybe imagine a scenario where survivors could do side objectives and build breakable walls as a reward for doing them. Or maybe breakable walls could work with other
I hard disagree with trying to rebuild anything. We've seen in 2v8 that rebuilding anything is a nightmare to experience, and I would much rather not have that. I would much rather not have that in the game at all. Let's not have more building stuff. Let's not have that, okay? We can come up with other side objectives that actually take up time that doesn't require them to get a gigantic net bonus. Because as in the clip itself, we're literally rebuilding Shack. Like, I don't think anybody wants to see that on the killer side. Like, we don't need that. We could just push that somewhere else and not have that, okay? Let's not have that, all right?
killer powers the same way they work with low pro chains, where certain killer powers could break the walls and hit survivors through them, opening up new ways of getting awesome clips. Imagine throwing a hatchet through a wall across the map and hitting a survivor on the other side of it, or grabbing a survivor with a Wesker dash through the wall. You get the idea. Would these ideas be balanced and work? Maybe not, but at least it's something. I'm trying. At least I'm trying more than Behavior did. I honestly expect breakable walls not to last much longer, or at least to keep their position as just not really being worth anything. It's really a shame. I hate to see an idea that has a lot of potential wasted because Behavior isn't really trying.
I wish he offered a little bit more in terms of what the potential could have been, because I honestly still don't know exactly what potential could exist. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube things. Support the channel with the links in the description. The original video will also be down there, so if you want to see the rest of the video, watch it there. Watch it on his channel. And I will see you guys in the next one.